You know, sometimes an ugly duckling sits waiting for you for decades, and one day you, the photographer, steps back and says, "Wow, how did I miss that?" This is one of those occasions, and I fell in love with the duckling, the Marks Tay Motorworks. Hi everyone, with the lockdown and my walks, I saw the building for the first time with no cars outside and bathed in the evening light. I just had to come back and show the original beauty still creeping out, trying to survive all those years. I also carried out a recce and was surprised with what I ended up with, but more on that later in the video. And also please don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell and like as well. Thanks a lot. My original thoughts were of a shot from a side angle, so this is the first image that I took. Straight away I knew that I'd got here a bit late because those shadows were coming up quite high, and I knew I needed to come back on another day, maybe about half an hour earlier. I wasn't too keen on that house on the left hand side there with that white chevron coming up, so I tried another shot just further back and round. But that started to close up the frontage really, and obviously opened up this side, which isn't attractive either. I also tried from the other side and had a look at that, but it then opens up all of this brick wall down the side here, and I'm not too keen on this wire coming across either. And you know, it's really about this frontage. I even tried a vertical panoramic stitch just to get underneath this wire here and see how that looked, and this was the final image. I still wasn't really happy with this because it's not what the building is about really, and I did take this before I left of the front, and I've got to say, for me, I think this is the shot. It's all about the shapes, the lines, the architecture, that banner of Marks Tay Motorworks, and I think that's going to work a lot better, particularly in a black and white shot as well. So it's going to be a case of coming back, making sure we've not got those shadows coming up from the bottom there, and really see how it goes. What do they say? All best plans. When I got here for my next visit, there was a lorry parked right in the front. However, I did go and ask if he would move, and was really polite, and he did actually move up the road. Well, I came back for a second day and I took this shot, but I have to say I'm not really as keen on this one as the original test shot that I first took. It doesn't help that the sun is casting a shadow with that line over onto the Marks Tay Motorworks, and that's quite intrusive, alongside those three downlighters as well with their shadows coming down. I think I'm going to come back a third day and go with the timing somewhere in between the previous shot and this one. I'm also starting to appreciate this cable coming across on the roof area here, and it's really almost like scarring, and it's part of what the whole image is and what it's about, and this heavily used garage. Now back for the third evening, or third day lucky, and I'm much happier, I've got to say, with these shadows and where they're falling. Plus we've got some more light in the foreground. Even though I want to cut some of that out, that's looking a lot better. The first thing I'm going to do is go up to the perspective tool up here, and we're going to pull out the lines for the correction of the perspective. And when you pull these out, don't keep them short like this, but pull them all the way out, and that will allow you to line up the angles and the edges a lot easier. Same on the right hand side here. And then we'll look at the horizontals as well. So don't forget we can use horizontals, and this will help square it all up. That's the top one. Now we've got a little bit more difficult here, but we'll go on that black line at the bottom there, and hopefully that is straight. Good, that's done. Now a little tip, you can move these about just to check how things are looking in the rest of the image, so do try that if you're not too sure. The other thing you can do is you can zoom in and then shift the edges to the edge of the actual workspace window, and then you can see how they line up, and they should be parallel. So move left and right and check that those are actually parallel, and we can do the same with the tops and bottoms, so just move those around, and if you can't quite get parallel, then just zoom in a little bit more if you need to. Now, although this is going to be monochrome, I do still work on the colour version, so we'll take a look at the colours on this, and we'll put in a little bit of blue there, just check the tint as well. Yeah, that looks pretty good. The highlights I think are fine, there's no problems there, and maybe we'll have a little look at the shadows, but there's not too much to worry about at all there. So just looking here at those, and we're just opening those shadows up just a touch, but you know, there is a little bit of a highlight on that left door there that's black, and we don't need too much there at all. So looking down at whites and blacks, I rarely use those, and they're fine on this. And looking at texture and clarity, well, this is a high contrast shot. I shot it on a Fuji X100F, so there's lots of quality there, and 200 ISO is going to give me good quality, so I'm not going to bother with any texture or clarity. Coming down to vibrance and saturation. Now, I already worked out the crop from my previous 2 evenings, so I know where it is. I will put that crop in straight away. This is a fairly straight crop, and as I mentioned earlier, I wasn't thinking of shooting this from the front, but it is all about this frontage here, and it's all about the Marks Tay Motorworks filling the frame, I think, and screaming, "Look at me!" and you've got all of that lovely line and shapes coming through, and the big banner of Marks Tay Motorworks. I do think I'm just going to tone down that left hand side where the sky is there. So zooming out so I can select a brush, and then using some negative exposure, just go to the side so I can see the brush size, and using the bracket keys getting that bigger. And I generally do work on a very low flow and a high feather, so I can then build up with the flow as I need to. So coming in from the top and the side there, we'll just bring that down, checking on the mask, and we're just going to adjust that just a little bit. It's always a bit of a guess. I quite like those clouds there. You know, they had a little bit of interest in the background there, but they're not too strong. So I've just overdone it a little bit on the edges of the building here, so just using the eraser, we'll just bring that back again. Working with the bracket keys is really fast, so we can just move up and down on the brush size, and just make sure we don't overdo this eraser and get at some sort of glow coming in on that edge there. Yeah, I think we'll go with that, and I may just add a very small vignette when we get actually into the black and white. Now going over to the black and white, and we're just going to take a look at the colours, and we've got some blue, we've got some red, there's yellow there and green, so we want to remember those for when we go into black and white and go with the black and white mix. So checking first of all on those blues, and we're just going to bring those down a little bit. Don't overdo this, this quite often gets pushed too far, and it's great for dramatic shots, and sometimes I will do something like this with my brutalist architecture, but you know, keep it a little bit further back, and remember it's more about the actual building itself than the sky. Yellows, just pushing those backwards and forwards, see what's happening with those yellows, and bear in mind there is some yellow in that sunlight there, so that's a little bit too much really. So we're going to just dial that back, and then looking at these reds, particularly on these posters on the left hand side here, and we want to keep this logo here, that's really important, and just I think bring this one back a little bit more on that far left hand side, so it really matches those windows and door over there, adds some balance to those blacks on the opposite side. Once you move to black and white, it's always worth going back to exposure and contrast in particular, and just checking what those levels are looking like. So we'll zoom in and take a look at this building at the top here, and I think that's just a touch on the bright side, so we'll maybe pull that back a little bit. Want to make sure we're seeing some detail coming through there. Maybe pull those highlights back, just see what it's doing, and then drag it back till we're happy where we've got a level that works. Yeah, that will do. So I'm just going to fine tune if we need to. Just checking down here. Now that does look a little bit on the dark side, but I'm actually going to come back and look at doing some dodging around these areas, I think. So I like what's going on in the top half. Just check that contrast as well. Lovely high contrast image, it's going to look great in a print. Yeah, so some fine tuning, just do what you need. You know, once you're back here in black and white. Let's take a look at it on a background here. So there's black and yeah, white. Now that looks fantastic. So this is going to go in a white mount for definite, and it just helps to see what the overall exposure is. And you can see it actually does still look a little bit on the dark side. So let's just move that up just a touch. Yeah, I like that. So I did mention about some dodging. So we'll go over to the adjustment brush here. Pick up on the exposure, so we're going to just add some exposure in there. Then with a large feathered brush, using those bracket keys to get it bigger, we're just going to touch in some light around here. Now it's looking a bit on the bright side, but all we've got to do is just drag that slider back until we're really happy with the overall balance. So a little check around there. I've got to say I do like all these little marks on the front here. It's all part of what this garage is all about. And it's not a new pristine building, but one of these old ladies that's really sitting there and gets hardly a second glance. Now that white dot is a little bit of an annoyance sitting there, isn't it? So I'm going to get rid of that maybe once we go into Photoshop, but that's definitely going to come out. Now looking at sharpening, I don't always do sharpening, I just let it come in at what it is naturally, which is usually around about the 40 mark on Photoshop and Lightroom. But with architecture I will take a look at this and maybe just add a little bit more. So let's take a look at that, and never go beyond 100 on the sharpening. With the radius I don't like to go above 1.5, but zoom in at 100% when you do this, and let's just move this up a little bit. And just looking at the text on the left hand side in particular. Now this area here, I've got to say, some lovely fine text, and that's what I'm looking at. Just turning that off and on here and just see what's happening. And again, like I said, don't overdo it. So that's just pinging in nicely, and have a look at the text on the other side here around this telephone number. Yeah, that's really good. I'm very happy with that. Really do keep an eye on over sharpening. So if we take a look at that area there, and let's put some extra sharpening in and also some additional radius, and you want to stop any glowing. You can see hopefully there's a glow coming through the edges there, and that's just far too much, and that will also transfer to other parts of the image. So if it's sharp in the first place, keep it there as it is. Maybe with some detail like architecture, just push it a little bit. But remember, it's viewing distance, and even more so with the print. Even though I do look at them when I'm judging them a lot closer than this. So zooming out, checking again. Going to effects, I'm going to put in a slight vignette, so pushing that all the way to 100 or minus 100, and then 100 feather, so full feather. When I'm happy with all of those things, I then start pulling the amount back again, and I only want the slightest amount of feathering in here. It's going to be a very low number. So yeah, somewhere around there. It's hardly noticeable, but just enough. Just turn that off and on and double check, and you see it's very, very subtle. Now I'm just going to go back and have a look at this bit of burning here, and I think I'm just going to adjust that a little bit more. I'm not entirely happy with it. And let's just see what we can do on the exposure. Now I'm going to go with a new brush. I'm just going to actually lighten this top right hand side, I think. And then just darken down this area here again, so I'm just trying to get a little bit more balance working between these two areas of the opposite corners. So gently just burning in there, and then coming back onto this wall again and just taking that back. And I'm already seeing that start to even up a lot better there. I'm much happier. It's always worthwhile maybe giving 24 hours on anything in particular that's quite special. So do some work on it and then leave it, come back a day later and just take another look at it, because we kind of do get lost in what we're doing. And that's a really worthwhile tip for anything, like I say, special for a competition or on the wall or even for a customer. So just checking that mask. Just going really small now and just fine tuning the edge there and just making sure that if any overspill comes through that it doesn't cause a glow. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. We'll go with that. So here's the test print that's come off the printer, and I've printed this onto Permajet fibre-based gold silk 315, a lovely heavyweight paper, very traditional darkroom feel to this, with some lovely creamy whites coming through and wonderful velvety blacks as well. Really great paper for monochrome, and like I said, has that really traditional feel. A few problems on this print itself, so before I go to a final print, I've marked them up on here. This roof area here, that's about a quarter or a half a stop too bright, so I'm going to bring that back and just get a little bit more detail coming in on that area. Then over here there's a little mark that really just annoys me, so I'm just going to dodge that in. And then on this side there's a little bit of a glow, so again just burning in this time to get rid of that glow that I missed. And there's a little bit of interference from a poster or a sign at the back there, so I'm just going to take that out so that doesn't give any side interference there. So that's the final print, and it's looking absolutely gorgeous on this gold silk Barita paper. Really does have that traditional feel of an old paper from the darkroom days, and the whites are coming through with a lovely creamy feel to them, so it really matches the whole subject matter here. That's the end of the video. I hope you've enjoyed this, and just remember, when you're out and about walking and you're passing these buildings, now and again just stop and see what you're missing.